All right, I think it's time to get started. Hey everyone, welcome to our session today. We are talking all things create responsibly and recreate responsibly. My name is Katie Bouet. I'm one of the founding members of the Recreate Responsibly Coalition, an outdoor advocate, budding author, and all around stoked person to talk about our responsibility we have to the planet and to each other. And I will start by letting our fellow panelists introduce themselves. Dusty, I'll pass it over to you first.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Dusty Vaughn. I'm the National Wilderness and Wild Scenic River Specialist for the USDA Forest Service based out of Washington, D.C. And I'll pass it over to Tom.
Hey there, I'm Tom Putnam. I am the director and producer of The Dark Divide, as well as some other documentaries about the great outdoors. And I am based in Oregon and California. And I'll pass it over to Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie Oberly. I'm a freelance photographer, cinematographer, and activist living on unceded Chumash territories in Ventura, California. And I'm just really honored to be here. Really want to just shout out Eric from the North Face for inviting me to be here. And we just premiered our short film, Walking Two Worlds at Tribeca, which the North Face supported. So thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Thanks, everybody. And I think before we started, our group, we had a little bit of a group text going this morning, just talking about what's been going on and just kind of the state of the last 24 hours in this country. So if you see us feeling a little heavy, that's why. And, we really appreciate everyone who showed up here right now. I think it's really important to acknowledge when things are hard and take space when we need it, but also to always be moving forward in action when we can. So really appreciate all of you that took some time out on this Saturday to be with us in community and in conversation. And we'll start today by going through a quick presentation on what Create Responsibly is, what we want to do, and why we think it's so important. And then we will dive into a panel conversation, and we really encourage you to use the Q&A section to ask us questions that we'll answer at the end of our panel. We really want to make this a conversation and super dynamic, so know that we're keeping an eye on the chat and keeping an eye on the Q&As, and we'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts and perspectives on all of this. So without further ado, we'll kick it off here.
Hi there. So Create Responsibly was started by a group of creators, some of whom are on the call. We were all a part of the Recreate Responsibly Coalition and realized that as creators, we felt there was no real best practices or nowhere to go to find out how best to utilize our wild spaces when creating content. So the goal was to put together something that were simple, easy to follow directions that would not only maximize ethical use of our wild places, but also make creating content in those places simpler. Dusty?
Thanks, Tom. Yes, the Create Responsibly concept was born from Recreate Responsibly Coalition. But what is Recreate Responsibly, though? Across the recreation landscape, we face opportunity and challenge. Our public lands and wild spaces are being loved like never before, and that attention is unlocking resources and support for the places we love to play. Our climate is changing more quickly than we can comprehend, and the need to act is urgent. It is our shared responsibility to build a safe and inclusive outdoors where everyone is welcome and feels welcome. The Recreate Responsibly Coalition emerged during the pandemic and has evolved to meet this unique moment. The coalition is built to work collaboratively across the outdoor industry, bringing together advocates, government agencies, and brands in ways like never before. Together, we are emboldening a shared land ethic rooted in equity that seeks to honor Indigenous land and water rights with a sense of stewardship and oneness with our natural surroundings that nurture and enliven us. At the core of Recreate Responsibility messaging is inclusivity and accessibility. We strive to ensure that messaging is simple, succinct, direct, and most of all, inviting. Our Recreate Responsibly's campaigns are at the heart of the movement. The coalition comes together to streamline important messaging, information, and resources regarding outdoor practices across industries, platforms, and audiences. Each directed form of communication on behalf of the coalition or its members regarding responsible recreation is part of a campaign. The campaigns of the coalition are developed and implemented collaboratively with land management agencies, nonprofits, and outdoor industry leaders. These campaigns are the voices of the coalition and help guide the movement. The current campaigns are Recreating Responsibly in Water, in Winter, with Fire, Off-Road, and today we're going to talk about the Create Responsibly.
So I'm basically a Boy Scout at heart, and it's important to me to leave things better than I found them. I grew up hiking, fishing, and camping in Southern Washington and Northern Oregon. And I've realized the only way that I'm going to be able to continue to enjoy these places and to be able to continue filming in those places is if we all work to take care of them. You saw a little bit of that film, The Dark Divide, which we filmed in 65 locations throughout just about every wild place imaginable through a variety of jurisdictions in Oregon and Washington. And one of the biggest challenges I faced on that film was speaking with the gatekeepers for those locations about their reluctance to say yes, because some previous production didn't listen, didn't care about the places they were filming, and caused some degree of damage to them or impacted the enjoyment of the other people who were there. So Create Responsibly is about employing simple, green production practices that minimize your impact on our wild spaces and on the other people who'll be using them around you while you work. But it's not just about using our platforms to remind audience, but it's also about using our platforms to remind audiences about the importance of the outdoors to our physical and mental well-being, which is, I think we can all agree, more important than ever now after how many years? 2 years, 10 years of being locked down and having many of these places closed to the public. And if it doesn't harm your story, we would encourage you to include those little reminders about the benefits of the outdoors so that it can get into other people's heads, and that's behavior that they might emulate. And in an era when as a creator, in an era when audiences and the public can easily turn on you, to be frank, even a tiny infraction or error can have major consequences on your future ability to create. And not just for you, for your client, if you have a client you're working for. They're trusting you to create something positive and without incurring liabilities. So one of the things we're trying to keep in mind is how to minimize your exposure when filming in public places.
Time in nature and outdoor recreation has proven to be essential for all, especially during uncertain times. All of us, from seasoned outdoor enthusiasts to families heading out to their local park for the first time, can turn to community and simple reminders about how to safely and responsibly recreate outdoors while caring for one another. There is no substitute for nature, but our love for the outdoors can have an impact, especially when poor behavior such as trampling, littering, wildlife disturbance, and visitor crowding or displacement is multiplied by our actions, whether they be purposeful or indirect, such as geotagging, filming in locations with sensitive habitats, which become tourism magnets by adoring fans and others. The Recreate Responsibly Coalition aspires for everyone to have a holistic outdoor experience by advancing all aspects of responsible recreation, keeping yourself, others, and outdoor places safe, accessing outdoor benefits essential to the human experience, and building an inclusive outdoors. The Create Responsibly principles help us reimagine how we engage with the outdoors as content creators and empower us to be supporting stewards. As a federal land management agency, the Forest Service and other federal land management agencies love how people share their experiences and connections to the outdoors, especially when they follow practices that reduce the impact to others and the land while creating an inclusive experience. Content creators have the ability to reach more audiences and inspire all of us to work together as stewards of these landscapes.
As someone who is a filmmaker and producer, the last thing I wanted to do as part of this group was to make it even more difficult to mount a production. So the goal here was to create simple, to follow best practices that anybody can attain, no matter the size of your crew, and that can be easily shared with that crew. We drafted quite a bit from the original Recreate Responsibly principles and design. So if you haven't taken a look at that, I would encourage you to. They're really great. And in an era when no one's sure about the rules, if many of you are probably familiar with the Supreme Court ruling about filming in national parks, and the fact that those rules can vary vastly from location to location, this is an easy step-by-step guide to lead you to the right person and set you up for success. We also thought it was important for people to know the pain points going into a shoot and not to discover those once you're there. A couple examples from The Dark Divide. That's a movie about a true story about a naturalist named Robert Pyle, who took a 6-week trek through the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. It had a lot of campfires and a lot of butterflies. And we discovered on our first day of shooting, you can't build real campfires in many of these locations. So we had to bring in an entire crew to create propane campfires that we hadn't planned on. And we couldn't introduce non-native butterflies into those habitats. So had I had something like this going into that film, it would have made a big difference in terms of my daily sort of headaches on that production. We also wanted to make clear this isn't just for location scouts. Everybody on set should be aware of these guidelines. All it takes is for one hiker to see a crew member chuck a water bottle into the bushes to get your production shut down, which can and will happen.
Again, the campaigns of the coalition are developed and implemented collaboratively with land management agencies, nonprofits, and outdoor industry leaders. This is true for the Create Responsibly campaign. Within the Recreate Responsibly structure is a federal agency working group who meets monthly to convene land managers who share trends, immediate needs, and priorities. For example, we utilize recreation.gov, your gateway to explore America's outdoor and cultural destinations across the country. On this site, we provide tools and tips to discover new adventures through a one-stop shop for inspiration and ideation, trip planning, information sharing, and reservations to help you dream up your next trip, figure out the details, and reserve experiences at over 4,200 facilities and 113,000 individual sites across the country. Please use recreation.gov to find incredible places and experiences that help you bring home a story. Through recreation.gov, we were able to see visitation trends, demands, and gaps, which we use to shape our messaging. The federal working group also identifies cohesive messaging approaches that are relevant and appropriate for public lands visitors. Finally, the federal working group strives to establish consistency amongst agencies in terms of responsible recreation standards. For example, we are working with the Department of Interior and Congress to try and clarify commercial filming law, regulation, and policy and develop best management practices and standards.
So what are the principles to create content responsibly? You'll see that these look very familiar to the Recreate Responsibly principles. So some things to know. There's someone responsible for every location. You may have read in the news that you don't need a permit to film in certain national parks. That is not true. You definitely still need to contact somebody and get permission. Permits, even for simple locations, can sometimes take months to process. Every aspect of your shoot needs to be clearly outlined prior. In particular, drones. As more and more of us use drones to film, that can take 90 days or more to get not just park, but FAA approval. And even if you think you're filming in a drone-free zone, if you plan far enough ahead of time, many times you can get permission to an exception to bring in those drones. Remember to check for weathers and hazards ahead of time. That'll prepare you for what to expect. And it's not just about whether or not it's going to rain. Have you marched your crew through Poison Oak like I did 2 weeks ago in Virginia? How about permitting a shoot where a bear has decided to set up shop? That happened on the Dark Divide twice. We filmed in a lava tunnel without getting a soil and air report and ended up having to test our entire crew for lung problems afterwards. There are a million things to take into account. And most times, if you make contact with the people responsible for those places, they're going to know what those are. Again, you can avoid some additional cost down the line. To do that, you want to begin with the local Film and Tourism Commission. They're then going to refer you to the land manager directly responsible for the location. And from there, you want to find out who the other stakeholders are. It's not just about getting permits for these places in some instances. For example, on the Dark Divide, we filmed a couple of days on an island out in the Columbia River between Oregon and Washington. We had a permit, but it also turned out that that's a sacred space for the Warm Springs tribe. So we were able to contact them ahead of time, understand some additional things they wanted us to do in order to respect those lanes that we wouldn't have been aware of. And that would have been a big issue for us had we gone out there and not taken that into account. And not only that, this is going to help you down the line because every group that has a good experience with your production is going to help share that production, is going to want to see that production down the road. A couple of examples of that are the Yakima and Cowlitz tribes we worked with for the Dark Divide, who became major promotional partners for the film once it was completed. Also, please remember that that place that came up first on your Google search for whatever amazing vista is coming up first on everybody else's Google search. So it's going to be the place that has the most people. Take the time to ask around and find places that are just as good, but that only the locals know. 99% of the time, it's going to be even better than what you first found. And the fewer people who use it, the easier it typically is to permit. And terrain isn't just where you've chosen to set up your camera, but how you get in and out. A location that may be fine for somebody in a sedan may swallow up your trailer and grip truck, which I've also had happen. So if you have to go get a bulldozer to pull a truck out, you're going to be very unhappy, and it's always easily avoidable. And getting to that location is just half the story. Is there adequate parking you can prearrange with the location managers? And even a quarter-mile hike to that amazing view you want to film that seemed so easy when it was just you and your sneakers can sink even a tiny production when you're hauling dolly track and craft services and just even a handful of things. Nearly every municipality has also cracked down on drone no-fly zones, and the fines are astronomical. If you're somebody who's using a drone regularly, I would encourage you to get your FAA Part 107 license. It takes about a week, and then you can download a free app like Aloft that'll show you the airspace restrictions ahead of time and allow you to instantly obtain access to film. And check as far in advance as you can. Many no-fly zones will be willing to give you a waiver if you do request it in advance. And always remember where you're going to go to the bathroom. This is the number one thing people forget about when shooting in these wild places. And nobody on your crew is going to be okay with going in the bushes, and neither is the Park Service. Remember to bring plenty of water and safety equipment. A crew member will appreciate and guard with their life that $4 reusable water bottle and hip holster with their name on it, and refill it from a large jug instead of taking 2 sips from one of those 800 disposable water bottles you have on set and then dumping them all over the place. And best of all, that'll save you as a producer a ton of money. Please remember that safety equipment is very cheap. You can buy headlamps for $7, which are a lot cheaper than one twisted ankle when a crew member is trying to get back to their car at the end of a shoot. Solar lights are amazing as well, and you can set those up anywhere without any impact on the places you're filming. And one thing I've learned is try to always keep a box with hard hats, rope, and other safety gear around. Even if your crew's not going to use them, they'll appreciate knowing that you care about their well-being. And this applies to COVID as well. I'm in the middle of a documentary right now, and we're shut down because the DP got COVID. So make sure you know basic COVID set safety and have masks, sanitizer, and individually packaged meals. Okay, Katie.
So the next tenet here is build an inclusive outdoors. Inspire others to see themselves in nature, showcase diverse backgrounds, abilities, and the meanings of the outdoors and what it means to get outdoors. And this has really been a backbone for the Recreate Responsibly Coalition from the beginning. There are so many resources out there that tell us kind of the guidelines of leave no trace, don't poop in the outdoors. We have all of these guidelines about the things we can do, but what we really wanted to do was create a better culture, make this a movement and not just a moment or like a single action that we take to clean up after ourselves. So we really want to reach across our communities, and all of that is founded upon this idea of inclusivity. And inclusivity is really what helps us create more robust and healthier cultures. Like many of the other guidelines, this one really seeks to create a ripple effect, right? Like build an inclusive outdoors. What does that really mean? Like, what is that as a single action? And that's really not the point here. The point is to shift a mindset. It's like an ongoing commitment that we make in multiple ways, right? So it's to who we represent in our content, what faces, what activities, what bodies, what languages we're showing. It also has to do with, the individuals themselves and the model, the behaviors that we're modeling and the cultures that we're upholding. And this also goes to who we're hiring for our crews, whether it's hiring a diverse crew and looking at the local places that we're going and getting in contact with boots on the ground there that are already embedded in these issues, that have special knowledge of these places and the sensitivities for an area or a topic or a conversation we're having. So really just being inclusive and widening our circle as much as possible, because the bigger we get, the better we get. We're also looking at the language that we use, considering accessibility, both in terms of our content and making sure that our content itself is accessible, whether that's alt text, image descriptions, font contrast images, as well as the places and the activities that we're showcasing. And of course, to consider the bigger picture, right? We're on public land. This is all, we're talking about things that are happening in the outdoors. And here in the United States, public lands are indigenous stolen homelands. And it is irresponsible for us to create content on that land without acknowledging that. And that should become an embedded part of what we do as creators, not an aside, not a quick land acknowledgement, but it's something that we do always. It's part of our culture and part of how we create content. We should be affecting both our personal experiences as creators. This should be changing us, and it should also be changing the people who are seeing and receiving our content. So it kind of goes both ways. We benefit, and the people who are getting our content are benefiting as well. And then the next one is on a similar concept, respect others. And I think that this might feel like, to the folks on this call, a pretty obvious ask, but it's a really critical element of creating a better outdoor culture for us more broadly. And as we look at creators and creation right now, you know, there is certainly some contention and conflict that arises as we are creating or sharing our creations. And so it's just a reminder to be thoughtful, be considerate, think of others, do unto others as you would like to be done unto you, and just minimize your impacts to other people's outdoor experiences. You know, it's the most basic tenet of human decency. Be respectful to others. As creators, it's inevitable that we are going to be disruptive to a space, regardless of whether we love a space, we're shooting something for conservation to help save a place. When we are shooting, we are causing a disruption, both physically with our equipment, our voices, and our crews, and also kind of, I call it like spiritually, you know, we're shifting the vibe of a space. No matter how respectful we are about it, the presence of cameras and microphones or crew and equipment does shift the experience for others as we turn these areas into makeshift production zones. So whether you're operating in selfie mode with just a handheld camera, or you're traveling with a full crew and craft services, you know, we are responsible to acknowledge and minimize the impacts that we have on other outdoor users' experiences. And I do want to read Jillian's quote real quick. She said, "We must at no time as filmmakers or any creator lose sight of where we are, nor the impact our work has on local communities and above all, the natural environment." And I think that that really is such a great way to sum that up, to be respectful. And, you know, I find that even just acknowledging the situation briefly when you're out and you see other people kind of hiking through where you're filming, just saying like, "Hey, thanks so much for like tolerating us, like hanging out here on your beautiful hike. Hope you have a nice day. And let us know if we get in your way or there's anything we can do." You know, just throwing it out there, like creating that moment of humanity and connection. And you might end up with someone who wants to come see your film next time because they saw you shooting it and had such a great experience. Like, let's be the stewards of creating content, and let's make sure that people walk away on their own hike with a positive experience. So just be thoughtful, tread lightly, and remember that everyone deserves a good outdoor experience, whether you're making a movie or just going for an evening walk.
Thanks, Katie. Powerful. Next principle is leave no trace. Respect the land, water, wildlife, and native and local communities. You're going to have an impact on these places, so think through that. Follow the 7 leave no trace principles. I saw that Susanna had a life-changing moment as she learned those 7 principles. So I encourage you to go and learn what those 7 principles are. There's a quick and fun way to do that, learning using hands. And so I encourage you to find that and you learn those. Avoid sensitive habitats. You know, there's a lot of plants out there that are very durable to trampling, you know, being walked on multiple times, but there are some that are not. So be aware of where you're walking, where are you putting things down on the ground while you're out there. Consider the impact of disclosing specific locations. You know, we have a lot of fans out there who want to go and see and experience maybe some of the same things that they saw in the film. So be thoughtful about, you know, where am I going? Is this a sensitive place? Is it going to be able to handle increased use because I included it in a film or not? And use your art to educate and showcase responsible use. So while, you know, people are in your film, your production, your art are doing things, you know, are they Are they inspiring others to recreate responsibly in actions that they are doing? Are you modeling good outdoor recreation behavior? Next is make it better. Use your art to inspire others to respect and care for these outdoor spaces. Depict responsible recreation in action. Provide characters with attributes that tie their work, play, or culture to the outdoors in these landscapes. Create behind the scenes content to celebrate your backdrop and showcase how you use sustainable practices to make your film. One of the best ways for us to learn is from learning from one another. So show and share how you were able to do this. And please continue to help us inspire others to become fellow stewards of our outdoor places. All right, and I'm going to pass it over to Katie again.
So together, all of these tenets create what I like to think of as an ecosystem for a thriving and sustainable creator culture in the outdoors. And we have these, you see this one pager here that we have on our little slide deck. And the original version of Recreate Responsibly, all the editions have one of these postcards. And our original tenets, we printed these out and as postcards, like physical, in your hands postcards, and distributed them to tourism boards, to public land visitor centers, for guides who are hosting trips, and other folks. And I actually was in Red Lodge, Montana on a Toyota photo shoot and was walking through town and saw in someone's window a local shop. They had the tenets up there. And it's so powerful, I think, to get it out into the world and to take these concepts and like physically put them somewhere. So what we're love to the idea of and would love to see more is like, imagine having these postcards included in crew paperwork, included in your call sheet. This is given out by brands when they're working with ambassadors, and when they ask people to create content for them, they receive this and they say, hey, these are our standards. You need to uphold them. Or they're handed out by someone like Dusty, someone at a public lands management agency who is providing permits for folks who are going to be creating content on public lands. But in the meantime, we're keeping things digital. And we would love for everyone here to get involved with us. So you can sign the pledge. Jeff has it pinned at the top of the chat, the link to sign our pledge, and really just start implementing these philosophies and these concepts and these guidelines into your creation plan and how you think about what you'll be creating and how you edit your creations and how you share things. We are building a resource library, and there have already been some great conversations in the chat about some really collaborative opportunities and great resources. So if you have those, we would love them. We want to make this something that anyone can access and become a better, more respectful creator from. And of course, stay tuned for opportunities. We have been working on this for about a year and a half now, and it has been a really collaborative effort. And the more hands carrying this work, the lighter the load and the larger impact we can have. So we would love to have anyone here involved. So definitely reach out to us about that. And I think the next slide has our email contact and all of that.